Park Hana hit the training room floor hard for the 5th time that morning. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs and left her gasping like a fish out of water. Above her towered Commander Vexistar, his 6 legs clicking against the metal floor with satisfaction. His compound eyes gleamed with what she could only describe as amusement. "Pathetic," Vextar said in his buzzing voice. "How did Earth ever qualify for coalition membership with specimens like this?" The other cadets watched from the edges of the sparring circle. Some tried to hide their smirks, but Hana saw them anyway. Cadet Morthek was not even trying to hide his laughter. The crystalline being's body sparkled with what Hana had learned was the Zentorian equivalent of joy at another's misfortune. Hana pushed herself up on shaking arms. Her ribs ached and she could taste blood in her mouth, but she stood anyway because that was what humans did. They got back up. "Again," she said through gritted teeth. Commander Vextar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a sigh among his species. "Child, you cannot even see my attacks coming. How do you expect to defend against them?" It was true, and Hana knew it. The Krillians moved faster than human eyes could track when they wanted to. Their reflexes were enhanced by their hive-mind connection, which let them share combat data instantly. Fighting one Krillian was like fighting their entire species at once. "I learn by doing," Hana said, raising her fists again. This time Vextar moved even faster. Hana saw nothing but a blur before pain exploded across her jaw. She spun through the air and crashed into the padded wall. The impact left her seeing stars and tasting more blood. "Enough!" came a voice from the observation deck. Kim Yuna stepped down into the training area. The human instructor's face was calm, but Hana caught the flash of anger in her eyes. "Commander, I believe Cadet Park has demonstrated sufficient resilience for today." Vextar straightened to his full height, which was nearly 3 meters. "Instructor Kim, with respect, resilience means nothing if it is paired with incompetence. This cadet will get herself and others killed if she continues on the command track. That decision is not yours to make," Kim Yuna replied smoothly. The Krillian commander clicked his mandibles again but said nothing more. He gestured to the other cadets, and they filed out of the training room. Morthek paused near Hana as she struggled to stand. "Perhaps you should consider the support division," the Zentorian said. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but his words cut like glass. "Filing reports requires no combat skills." After he left, Kim Yuna helped Hana to her feet. The instructor was a small woman, even by human standards, but she had survived 3 tours in the Coalition Navy. Her hands were gentle as she checked Hana for serious injuries. "You cannot keep doing this," Kim Yuna said quietly. "Taking beatings will not make you stronger." "Then what will?" Hana asked. Her voice came out more desperate than she intended. Kim Yuna studied her for a long moment. "Come with me." They left the training facility and walked through the academy's corridors. Other students moved aside as they passed. Some nodded respectfully to Kim Yuna, but most ignored Hana entirely. She had grown used to being invisible. The academy was built inside a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a training facility. Artificial gravity kept everyone comfortable, and the corridors were wide enough to accommodate the largest coalition species. Windows along the outer ring showed the stars beyond, cold and distant. Kim Yuna led her to a section of the academy that Hana had never seen before. The corridors here were older, with exposed metal beams and flickering lights. Fewer students came this way, and those who did moved quickly, as if they did not want to be seen. "Where are we going?" Hana asked. "The archives," Kim Yuna replied. "There are things you need to see." The archives occupied several levels deep in the asteroid's core. Most of the data was stored electronically, but the oldest records were kept in physical form. Books, scrolls, data crystals, and stranger things filled shelves that stretched up into darkness. Kim Yuna led her to a section marked with human symbols. The shelves here held books in dozens of Earth languages. Hana recognized Korean, English, Chinese, and others she could not identify. Every species contributes their historical records when they join the coalition, Kim Yuna explained. Most focus on their greatest achievements, their advanced technology, their powerful warriors, their psychic abilities. She pulled a thick book from one of the shelves and handed it to Hana. The cover was worn, and the title was in old Korean characters that Hana had to struggle to read. "What makes this different?" Hana asked. "Read it and find out." Hana opened the book carefully. The pages were yellow with age and smelled like old paper. The text inside was in modern Korean, which made reading easier. It was a collection of historical accounts from Earth's past. Stories of ordinary people who had faced impossible odds and somehow survived. She read about farmers who held off invading armies. She read about explorers who crossed frozen wastelands with nothing but determination. She read about scientists who worked for decades on problems everyone said could not be solved. None of these people had superhuman abilities. They were not faster than Krillians or stronger than the rock-like Gravans. They could not manipulate energy like Zentaurians or breathe underwater like Delphians. They were just humans who refused to give up. "Every species has advantages," Kim Yuna said as Hana read. "The Krillians have their hive mind. The Zentaurians can control matter and energy. The Gravans are nearly indestructible, and the Delphians can survive in any environment." "What do humans have?" Hana asked, though she thought she was beginning to understand. "We adapt," Kim Yuna said simply. "When other species face a problem their abilities cannot solve, they give up or die. Humans find another way." Hana kept reading. The stories all had the same theme: humans faced with impossible situations who found ways to survive and even thrive, not through superior strength or speed or magical powers, but through creativity, stubbornness, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. "Why are you showing me this?" Hana asked. Kim Yuna sat down beside her among the old books and records. "Because you remind me of these people. Everyone tells you that you are weak, that you do not belong here, but you keep coming back." "I get beaten every day," Hana pointed out. "Yes, you do. But you also get back up every day. Do you know what that tells me?" Hana shook her head. "It tells me that you are harder to break than anyone realizes, including yourself." They sat in comfortable silence for a while as Hana continued reading. The stories began to paint a picture she had never considered before. What if being human was not about being the strongest or fastest or most gifted? What if it was about being the most stubborn? "There is something else," Kim Yuna said eventually. She pulled another book from the shelf, this one much newer. "Recent reports from the outer colonies, strange disappearances, entire settlements going silent." Hana looked at the reports. Ships had been sent to investigate, but none had returned. The few automated probes that made it back sent only garbled transmissions before going offline. "What does this have to do with me?" Hana asked. "Maybe nothing," Kim Yuna admitted. "But something is coming, and when it arrives, the coalition will need every advantage it can get, including advantages we do not know we have." As they walked back to the main academy levels, Hana felt something changing inside her. The ache in her ribs and the taste of blood in her mouth seemed less important now. She had always thought of herself as the weak human trying to keep up with superior aliens. But maybe she had been thinking about it wrong. Maybe being human meant something different than she had imagined. Maybe tomorrow when Commander Vexitar knocked her down again, she would get up not because she was stubborn, but because she was exactly what she was supposed to be. The next morning, Hana entered the training room with her head held high. She was still going to lose. She knew that, but she was also going to get back up again and again until something changed. because that was what humans did. They found a way. 3 weeks after her visit to the archives, Hana found herself strapped into the passenger seat of a coalition transport ship. The vessel shuddered as it broke through the atmosphere of SciFiPrime, a dead world on the edge of coalition space. Through the viewport, she could see nothing but gray rock and twisted metal structures that might once have been cities. "Sensors show no life signs," announced Cadet Wu Jin from the pilot's seat. He was one of the few humans who had actually excelled at the academy, his enhanced reflexes making him a natural pilot. "But there are some interesting energy readings from the northern continent." Commander Vexitar studied his instruments with all 4 of his eyes. The readings matched descriptions from the initial survey reports: ancient technology, purpose unknown. Cadet Morthek shifted in his crystal form, light refracting through his body in patterns that indicated curiosity. "My people attempted to study this world centuries ago. The psychic interference made it impossible to maintain focus." The 4th member of their survey team was Cadet Pelandra, a Delphian whose blue-scaled skin glistened with moisture from the environmental suit she wore outside water. Her gills fluttered with what Hana had learned was anxiety. "The water table here is completely poisoned," Pelandra said through the ship's communication system. "Whatever happened to this world, it was catastrophic." As they descended toward the landing coordinates, Hana felt a strange tingling in the back of her mind. It was not painful exactly, but it was definitely there, like someone whispering just too quietly to understand. The landing was rough. Wu Jin did his best, but the ship's systems kept malfunctioning as they got closer to the surface. Warning lights flashed across the control panel, and the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. "Something is interfering with our electronics," Vexitar announced. His mandibles clicked with irritation. "We will need to complete this survey quickly." They suited up and left the ship. The air outside was thin and cold, filled with dust that got into everything despite their environmental protection. The landscape stretched away in all directions, broken and lifeless. The ruins rose from the ground like broken teeth. Whatever species had built them, they had been skilled architects. The structures seemed to flow rather than having been constructed, as if they had grown from the rock itself. "Stay close," Commander Vexitar ordered. "We have 3 hours to document what we can and return to the ship." They had barely entered the first structure when things began to go wrong. Morthek suddenly stopped moving, his crystal body flickering with chaotic light patterns. "I cannot focus," he said, his voice full of panic. "The psychic interference is too strong. It feels like my thoughts are being scattered." Pelandra was not doing much better. She had fallen to her knees and was gasping inside her environmental suit. "The emotions here," she whispered. "So much pain and fear. I cannot block it out." Even Commander Vexitar was affected. His connection to the Krillian hive mind, normally a source of strength, seemed to be causing him problems. He kept stopping and shaking his head as if trying to clear it. "The interference is getting stronger the deeper we go," he announced. "Perhaps we should return to the ship." But Hana found that the deeper they went, the clearer her head became. The tingling sensation in her mind was growing stronger, but it did not hurt. If anything, it felt like someone was trying to communicate with her. "Wait," she said. "I think there is something here we need to see." She led them deeper into the ruins, following an instinct she could not explain. The others struggled to keep up, their various enhanced senses working against them in this place. But Hana felt more alert than she had in months. The passage opened into a vast chamber filled with strange machinery. The devices were unlike anything in Coalition technology databases. They seemed to be made of a material that shifted between metal and crystal, and they hummed with power that had somehow survived whatever catastrophe had destroyed this world. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal with what looked like a control interface. As Hana approached it, symbols began to appear in the air above the device. The characters were completely alien, but somehow she found that she could understand them. "Warning," the symbols said. "The Devourers return." What does it say? Vextar asked. The interference was so bad now that he could barely stand. Hana touched the interface, and suddenly the chamber filled with images. Holographic displays showed star maps, battle scenes, and creatures that made her blood run cold. The beings in the images were wrong in ways that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to exist partially outside normal space, their form shifting and changing in patterns that made no sense. "This is a record," Hana said, somehow certain of what she was seeing. The species that lived here, they were called the Architects. They built technology based on willpower and determination rather than physical laws. More images flowed past them. The Devourers consuming entire star systems, their hunger growing stronger with each world they destroyed. The Architects fighting back with weapons powered by hope and stubbornness, holding the line for thousands of years before finally falling. They knew the Devourers would return someday. Hana continued, her hand still on the interface. They left this message as a warning. The final images showed why the Devourers were so dangerous. They did not just destroy civilizations, they fed on them. They consumed the life force and willpower of entire species, growing stronger with each victory. And they had a special hatred for species with powerful abilities, because those abilities made them easier to predict and counter. The Krillion's hive mind becomes a weakness because it can be corrupted, Hana said, reading the information that flowed through her mind. The Zentaurian's energy manipulation feeds the Devourers directly. Even the Delphians' telepathy becomes a liability because it opens their minds to invasion. Then how did anyone fight them? Wu Jin asked. The answer came as the final set of images. The Architects had not defeated the Devourers through superior technology or psychic powers. They had held them off through sheer stubborn determination to survive. Their technology responded not to enhanced abilities, but to the raw human qualities of hope, determination, and refusal to surrender. They were like us, Hana whispered. They were not the strongest or the fastest or the most gifted, but they were the hardest to break. Commander Vextar was backing toward the exit now, the psychic interference too much for his enhanced senses to handle. "We need to leave," he said. "This place is dangerous." But Hana was not ready to go. She could feel the machines around them, responding to her presence, ancient systems coming online after centuries of dormancy. The Architect technology recognized something in her that it had been waiting for. A new symbol appeared above the interface. This one was different from the others, simpler but somehow more important. "Key," it said. "Key to what?" Hana asked. The answer came as knowledge flowing directly into her mind. The Architects had built their final weapon not as a device, but as a person. Someone with the mental resilience to use their technology without being overwhelmed by it. Someone who could maintain hope and determination even when facing cosmic horrors that drove other species insane. Someone human. "We have to go," Vextar insisted. "The ship's systems are failing and we need to get off this world." Hana reluctantly removed her hand from the interface. The knowledge that had been flowing into her mind slowed to a trickle, but it did not stop completely. She could still feel the connection, weaker but present. As they made their way back to the ship, the others recovered somewhat from the psychic interference. But Hana found herself changed by what she had experienced. The tingling in her mind was permanent now, a constant reminder of what she had learned. "What happened in there?" Wu Jin asked as they prepared for takeoff. "I am not entirely sure," Hana admitted. "But I think I understand why humans were accepted into the coalition despite being weaker than every other species." "Why?" Pelandra asked. Hana looked out at the dead world falling away beneath them. Somewhere out in the darkness between galaxies, ancient enemies were stirring. The coalition's most powerful species would face them with advanced technology and enhanced abilities, and they would lose just as countless civilizations had lost before them. because sometimes the universe needs someone too stubborn to know when they are beaten, she said. The flight back to the academy was quiet. Each of them had been affected by what they had seen in the ruins, but none more than Hana. She carried with her now the knowledge that humanity's place in the galaxy might be more important than anyone had realized. When they docked at the academy, reports were already coming in from the outer colonies. More worlds had gone silent. Ships sent to investigate had disappeared without a trace. The Coalition Council was calling emergency sessions to discuss the growing threat. Hana walked through the academy corridors with new purpose. Tomorrow she would return to the training rooms and Commander Vexitar would knock her down again. But now she understood that getting back up was not just stubbornness, it was preparation. The emergency session of the Coalition Council lasted 3 days. Representatives from every member species gathered in the Great Chamber aboard the orbital station above Earth. Hana watched the proceedings from the gallery reserved for Academy cadets, but her mind kept drifting back to the ruins on HFY. Grand Admiral Zephyros of the Aquatic Union was speaking, his translated words echoing through the chamber. 7 more colonies have gone silent in the past week. Our most advanced reconnaissance vessels have failed to return from the affected systems. The pattern is clear, added Councillor Vorth of the Graven Collective. His rock-like form shifted as he spoke, pebbles falling from his shoulders. Something is systematically destroying our outer settlements. But despite the mounting evidence, most of the council seemed reluctant to believe they faced a threat their technology could not handle. The Zentaurian representative, High Crystal Morandon, sparkled with dismissive light patterns. Perhaps these are natural phenomena we do not yet understand, Morandon suggested. Surely no enemy could threaten the combined might of the coalition. Hana found herself gripping the gallery railing. She wanted to stand up and tell them about the Devourers, about the Architect warnings, about the ancient technology that still hummed with power on a dead world. But she was just a cadet. Who would listen to her? After the session ended, Hana made her way to the human delegation quarters. She found Ambassador Yoon Tae-hyung reviewing diplomatic protocols with his staff. The ambassador was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much of galactic politics. "Cadet Park," he said, looking up from his work. "I heard about your mission to HFY. Interesting discoveries. Sir, I need to tell you what we really found there," Hana said. Ambassador Yoon studied her for a moment, then gestured for his staff to leave them alone. "Sit down and tell me everything." Hana told him about the Architect ruins, about the technology that responded to human determination, about the warnings of an enemy that fed on the strengths of advanced civilizations. The ambassador listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "You believe these Devourers are responsible for the missing colonies," he said when she finished. "I am certain of it," Hana replied, "and I think the Coalition is preparing to fight them in exactly the wrong way." Before the ambassador could respond, an aide burst into the room. "Sir, urgent message from the Outer Rim Defense Fleet. Admiral Kang Hyunwoo is requesting immediate evacuation. Support for the Kepler 442 system." The message that followed was worse than anything the Council had discussed. An entire star system, home to nearly 1 billion Coalition citizens, had been attacked by something beyond their understanding. The few ships that escaped described enemies that seemed to exist partially outside normal space, weapons that turned a target's own defenses against them, and a creeping despair that made even veteran soldiers want to surrender. Admiral Kang Hyunwoo's final transmission was brief and terrifying. "They are not just destroying our ships," his voice crackled through the communication system. "They are making our crews want to die. Every advantage we have becomes a weakness. Requesting all available support, but I do not think conventional forces can stop this." The transmission cut to static. Within hours, the academy was transformed from a training facility into a military planning center. Senior officers arrived from across coalition space, bringing with them reports that painted an increasingly desperate picture. The enemy was not just powerful, they were incomprehensible. Traditional military tactics had no effect, and in many cases seemed to make the situation worse. General Baek Ji-soo, one of the highest-ranking humans in the coalition military, called Hana to a private meeting. The general was a compact woman with silver hair and scars that spoke of battles fought on a dozen worlds. "Ambassador Yoon tells me you have unique insights into this threat," General Baek said without preamble. "Tell me what you know." Once again, Hana shared her experiences on SciFiPrime. But this time she had an audience that understood military implications. General Baek asked pointed questions about the architect technology, about the nature of the devourer threat, and about why human mental resilience might be the key to survival. "You are saying our weaknesses are actually strengths," General Baek summarized. "Not weaknesses," Hana corrected. "Different strengths. The coalition has always focused on measurable advantages: speed, strength, psychic abilities, advanced technology. But humans excel at things that are harder to measure, such as stubbornness, adaptability, the ability to maintain hope when logic says there is none, the capacity to keep fighting when victory seems impossible." General Baek was quiet for a long moment. "The Academy has been trying to make you more like the other species," she said finally. "Faster, stronger, more aggressive. But what if that was the wrong approach?" The next few weeks were unlike anything Hana had experienced. Instead of trying to match alien abilities, her training focused on developing uniquely human traits. She learned meditation techniques designed to maintain clarity under psychic assault. She studied historical battles where humans had won through unconventional thinking rather than superior firepower. She practiced maintaining morale in simulated hopeless situations. Her new instructor was not an alien commander, but Dr. Choi Min-ho, a human xenoarchaeologist who had spent decades studying architect ruins. He was a quiet man who preferred books to weapons, but he understood the ancient technology in ways that others could not. "The architects faced the same problem we do now," Dr. Choi explained as they worked with fragments of architect technology. "How do you fight an enemy that turns your strengths against you?" Their answer was to develop strengths that could not be turned. The technology responded to Hana's touch in ways that amazed even Dr. Choi. Ancient machines that had been dormant for millennia came to life when she approached them. Devices that had baffled coalition scientists for decades began operating as if they had been waiting for her specifically. "It is not magic," Dr. Choi assured her as she activated yet another piece of architect equipment. "Their technology is based on quantum fields that respond to specific neural patterns, patterns that seem to be naturally present in human brain structure." "Why humans?" Hana asked. "What makes us special?" "Evolution," Dr. Choi replied. "Every species develops according to their environment. Most species faced challenges that could be overcome through specialization. Bigger predators meant becoming stronger or faster. Harsh environments meant developing specific resistances. But humans evolved on a world that threw everything at them. We developed general adaptability instead of specific advantages. While Hana trained with architect technology, the war situation grew worse. Entire sectors were going dark as the Devourer advance accelerated. The Coalition's most advanced fleets were destroyed or worse, converted to serve the enemy. Reports spoke of Coalition soldiers who had been turned into something barely recognizable, their enhanced abilities twisted into weapons against their former allies. Commander Vextar, the Krillian who had once dismissed Hana as worthless, sought her out after a particularly devastating battle report. His compound eyes held something she had never seen before. Fear. "My hive brothers in the 4th Fleet," he said quietly. "They sent a distress signal before they went silent. They said the enemy was using our shared consciousness against us, making us feel their despair, their hunger. Is it true that humans are immune to such attacks?" "Not immune," Hana corrected, but resistant. Human consciousness is more individual, more chaotic, harder to overwhelm or redirect. Vextar was quiet for a moment. I owe you an apology, Cadet Park. I thought your weakness would get others killed. I did not understand that it might be what saves us all. The breakthrough came during a training session with a particularly complex piece of architect machinery. The device was designed to create tactical simulations, but only for minds that could maintain hope in hopeless situations. For weeks, it had refused to activate for anyone except Hana. But on this day, it responded to Li Wu-jin as well. Her childhood friend had been working to develop the same mental disciplines she had been learning, and his pilot reflexes combined with human adaptability created something new. "It is working," Dr. Choi said excitedly. "The machine recognizes him as compatible." Within days, other humans were beginning to show similar results. Jang Myung, a communications officer who had been dismissed as too emotional, proved capable of maintaining contact with architect systems even under simulated psychic assault. Oh Jinwoo, a technician considered too erratic by alien standards, found that his unpredictable thought patterns made him nearly invisible to enemy detection. "Systems. We are not training super soldiers," General Bayek explained to the coalition leadership. "We are developing specialists for a type of warfare the galaxy has never seen. Soldiers who can fight enemies that exist partially outside normal reality." The final test came when a Devourer scout ship was detected approaching the Sol system. Instead of sending the Coalition's most advanced warships, General Bayek authorized a mission using modified human vessels equipped with architect technology. Hana found herself aboard the lead ship as they moved to intercept the enemy. The Devourer main fleet arrived at the fortress world of Bastion 7 on a Tuesday morning, though the concept of morning became meaningless as their ships blotted out the star. Hana watched from the bridge of the Coalition flagship as reality itself seemed to twist around the enemy vessels. Admiral Kang Hyun-woo stood beside her, his weathered face grim as tactical displays showed the scope of what they faced. "Sensors count over 3,000 enemy ships," he reported. "But the readings keep changing. It is as if they exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." The first wave of the Coalition Defense Fleet moved to engage. These were the pride of galactic civilization. Zentorian crystal ships that could manipulate matter at the atomic level, Krillian hive vessels with perfect coordination between hundreds of crew members, and graven fortress ships that could withstand the explosion of a small star. They lasted exactly 17 minutes. Hana watched in horror as the Coalition's greatest weapons were turned against them. The Zentorian ships began tearing themselves apart as their matter manipulation technology was somehow reversed. Krillian vessels went silent as their hive mind connection became a conduit for alien thoughts that drove their crews insane. Even the mighty graven fortresses crumbled as their near-invulnerable armor began to phase out of normal space. "All ships, fall back to the inner defense perimeter," Admiral Kang ordered, but his voice carried no hope. They all knew that conventional tactics had failed completely. The few ships that escaped the first engagement brought with them something worse than casualties. They brought testimony of what the Devourers actually were. Captain Nam Soo-young, her face pale with shock, delivered her report to the command staff. "They are not just aliens," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They are hunger given form. They consume not just matter and energy, but hope itself. I watched my crew give up before the enemy even fired a shot. Our own strengths became chains that bound us to despair." The second wave fared no better. The Delphian telepaths, who should have been able to coordinate perfect strategies, were overwhelmed by alien thoughts that drove them to catatonic terror. The Coalition's most advanced AI systems turned on their own crews, their logic circuits corrupted by enemy influence that operated outside normal causality. "We have lost 70% of our fleet," Admiral Kang reported. "Remaining vessels are requesting permission to withdraw. Denied, came the reply from Coalition Command. Bastion 7 must be held at all costs. But Hana could see the truth in the Admiral's eyes. They were not fighting a battle they could win through conventional means. They were witnessing the systematic dismantling of everything the Coalition believed about warfare, technology, and survival. That was when the real enemy revealed itself. A new ship emerged from the Devourer fleet, larger than anything they had encountered. As it approached Bastion 7, reality around it began to break down. Stars flickered and went out, replaced by something that hurt to look at directly. The space around the vessel filled with whispers that could be heard even through the vacuum. From this flagship came a transmission that bypassed all communications equipment and spoke directly into the minds of every living being in the system. The voice belonged to something that had once been a Coalition officer but was now something else entirely. "I am Captain Chen Wei-Ming of the Coalition survey ship Endeavor," the voice said, though the words carried undertones of alien hunger. "I serve the eternal devourers now, as you all shall serve. Your species' gifts have made you strong, but they have also made you predictable. We know how Zentaurians think, how Krillians coordinate, how Gravens endure. We have consumed 1,000 galaxies by turning strength into weakness." The transmission showed images of countless civilizations falling to the Devourers. Each species had fought according to their nature, and each had been defeated by having that nature used against them. "But there is one species here that puzzles us," the possessed captain continued. "Humans. You have no great strengths for us to corrupt. You should be the easiest to break, yet you continue to resist. Why?" Admiral Kang looked at Hana, and she realized that somehow this moment had always been coming. All her training, all her failures and small victories had been preparation for this. "Because we are too stubborn to know when we are beaten," Hana said quietly. The Admiral nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Kang. Implement Plan Defiance. Show them what humans do when the odds are impossible." What followed was the strangest battle in galactic history. While the remaining Coalition forces struggled against enemies that turned their abilities into weaknesses, human ships began operating according to different principles entirely. They used no advanced technology, no enhanced abilities, no sophisticated strategies. Instead, they improvised. Captain Oh Jinwoo took his damaged destroyer and rammed it into a Devourer ship 3 times its size, not because it was a good tactical decision, but because he was too angry to think of anything else. Lieutenant Jang Myung jury-rigged a communications array from spare parts and coffee cups, creating a frequency modulation that somehow disrupted Devourer coordination patterns. Ensign Sim Do-yun, who had failed every piloting simulation at the Academy, managed to fly his fighter through impossible enemy formations by making up his maneuvers as he went along. The Devourers, who had consumed civilizations by understanding and corrupting their nature, found themselves facing an enemy they could not comprehend. Human tactical decisions made no sense according to any logical framework. Human technology was patched together from incompatible systems that should not have worked together. Human crews maintained morale through jokes, stubbornness, and a refusal to accept reality. "They are adapting too quickly," came the alien voice through the possessed captain. "Their patterns change faster than we can analyze them. How do they function without consistency?" Hana, meanwhile, had other plans. While the fleet engaged the enemy forces, she led a small team of specialists toward the Devourer flagship. Their ship was a hastily converted transport vessel equipped with architect technology that responded to human determination rather than logical programming. Her team consisted of the humans who had been dismissed as failures by conventional standards. Wu Jin, whose reflexes were good, but whose tactical thinking was considered too unorthodox. Myung, whose emotional responses interfered with standard protocols. Jinwoo, whose erratic behavior made him unsuitable for normal duties. Do-hyun, whose creativity was seen as unreliability. Together, they represented everything alien species found incomprehensible about humans. "Remember the plan," Hana told them as they approached the enemy flagship. "There is no plan. We improvise. We adapt. We make it up as we go along. That is what humans do." The infiltration of the Devourer ship was unlike anything in military doctrine. They did not follow careful intelligence preparations or sophisticated infiltration techniques. Instead, they found a hole blown in the enemy hull by debris and climbed through it. They navigated corridors that shifted and changed by following their instincts rather than maps. They avoided detection by acting too irrationally for enemy sensors to predict their behavior. The ship's interior was a nightmare of twisted space and alien geometry. Corridors led in directions that did not exist, and rooms were bigger inside than their boundaries should have allowed. The air itself seemed thick with despair and hunger. But Hana found that the more alien and impossible their surroundings became, the clearer her mind grew. The architect training had prepared her for this. Where other species would be overwhelmed by the impossibility of what they were experiencing, humans simply accepted it and kept moving forward. They reached the ship's control center to find Captain Chen Wei-ming, or what was left of him. The Devourer possession had changed him into something barely recognizable, his form shifting between human and something else entirely. "You should not be here," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that made reality shiver. "This ship exists partially outside your dimension. No human technology can function here. Good thing we are." 6 months after the battle at Bastion 7, Hana stood before the full Galactic Coalition Council. The Great Chamber was packed with representatives from every member species, but the atmosphere was different from her first visit. Where once there had been confident superiority, now there was desperate hope. The Devourer main fleet had been tracked moving toward the galactic core, consuming everything in their path. Entire sectors had gone dark, their populations either destroyed or converted into something worse. The Coalition's conventional forces had proven useless, their greatest advantages turned into fatal weaknesses. All eyes were on the humans now. "Council, Speaker Threnody," Hana began, addressing the ethereal being who presided over the assembly. 6 months ago, most of you considered my species to be the weakest members of the Coalition. Today you ask us to lead the defense of our galaxy. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species still struggled with the idea that their salvation might come from the beings they had once dismissed. "The situation has changed," Speaker Threnody replied, their voice carrying harmonics that translated emotion across species barriers. "We have witnessed what conventional warfare achieves against this enemy. Nothing." High crystal Morandin of the Zentaurians flickered with patterns that indicated reluctant agreement. "Our energy manipulation feeds them. Our matter control is turned against us. Even our most advanced artificial intelligences become weapons in their hands." Commander Vextar, speaking for the Krillian Collective, clicked his mandibles in what Hana now recognized as submission rather than dismissal. "Our hive mind, which has been our greatest strength for millennia, becomes a pathway for their corruption. We cannot fight as we have always fought." "Then how do we fight?" demanded Counselor Vorth of the Graven Collective. His rocky form shifted with anxiety, pebbles falling to the chamber floor. Hana activated the holographic display system, showing tactical plans that would have been considered insane by any conventional military doctrine. "We fight like humans," she said simply. The plan she presented violated every principle of galactic warfare. Instead of massive fleets with coordinated strategies, she proposed small independent cells operating with no central command structure. Instead of advanced technology, she recommended improvised weapons and jury-rigged equipment. Instead of logical tactical progression, she suggested pure chaos. "This makes no sense," protested Admiral Zephyros of the Aquatic Union. "How can disorder defeat an enemy that has consumed organized civilizations for eons?" "Because disorder is what they cannot understand or predict," Hana replied. "Every species they have faced fights according to their nature. Zentaurians manipulate energy in predictable patterns. Krillians coordinate through their hive mind in ways that can be anticipated. Gravans endure through methods that can be calculated. But humans adapt randomly, irrationally, impossibly." She showed them recordings. From human vessels during the battle at Bastion 7, ships held together with improvised repairs that should not have worked. Crews making tactical decisions based on instinct rather than analysis. Weapons jury-rigged from incompatible systems creating effects that no engineer could have predicted. "You want us to abandon logic?" said Dr. Keyleth of the Synthetic Collective, their artificial consciousness struggling with the concept. "I want you to learn from humans," Hana corrected. "Not to become human, but to understand what makes us effective against this enemy. We succeed because we fail better than anyone else." The debate that followed lasted hours. Species that had built civilizations on logic, order, and predictable advantages struggled to accept that their salvation lay in embracing chaos. But the reports from the Devourer advance made the choice clear: adapt or be consumed. Finally, Speaker. Threnody called for silence. "The Council recognizes that unprecedented threats require unprecedented responses. Commander Park, the Coalition places itself under human strategic guidance." For the first time in galactic history, a human would lead the combined forces of all member species. The months that followed were unlike anything in Coalition military history. Instead of building massive fleets, Hana organized small, independent groups that operated with no central coordination. Each cell consisted of mixed-species crews trained to think like humans, to improvise, adapt, and maintain hope when logic suggested surrender. Cadet Sim Do-hyun, who had once been considered too erratic for flight duty, became one of the most effective cell leaders. His unpredictable tactics and habit of making up strategies on the spot proved perfect for confusing Devourer prediction systems. Lieutenant Jang Myung transformed Coalition communications, replacing efficient logical protocols with chaotic, human methods that seemed to work through sheer stubbornness. Her networks became invisible to enemy detection because they operated on principles that made no sense to alien logic. Captain Oh Jinwoo took charge of equipment development, creating weapons and systems from incompatible technologies that somehow functioned better than purpose-built alternatives. His workshops became temples to human ingenuity, where failure was just another word for learning. But the real test came when the Devourer main fleet reached the core worlds. Their flagship, a construct the size of a small moon, emerged from hyperspace accompanied by forces that defied comprehension. Reality twisted around them, stars flickered out, and space itself seemed to recoil from their presence. At their head was the Devourer Prime, an entity so ancient it remembered the birth of galaxies. When it spoke, its voice reached into the minds of every living being in a dozen star systems. "Children of matter and energy," it said, words carrying the weight of eons. "We have consumed the hope of 1,000,000 civilizations. We have turned their greatest strengths into chains of despair. What can you possibly do that countless others have not tried?" Hana, aboard her flagship at the center of the human-led resistance, smiled grimly as she activated the communications array. Her response went out not just to the enemy, but to every human cell scattered across the galaxy. "We can be human," she said, "and humans do not know when to quit." The battle that followed was fought across multiple dimensions of reality. Devourer ships that existed partially outside normal space found themselves confronted by human vessels held together with spare parts and determination. Ancient entities that had consumed the hope of civilizations encountered crews who maintained morale through bad jokes and stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The Devourers tried to turn human unpredictability against them, but found that chaos cannot be corrupted when it operates without pattern or logic. They attempted to consume human hope, but discovered that human hope was not based on reasonable expectations of success, but on pure spite toward an unfair universe. Cell after cell of mixed-species crews, trained in human methods of warfare, struck at the enemy from directions that should not have existed. They used weapons that should not have worked, employed tactics that violated the laws of military science, and maintained coordination through methods that made no logical sense. Turning point came when Hana led a strike team aboard the Devourer Prime's flagship. The entity itself waited for them in a chamber that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, its form shifting between states of being that human language had no words for. "You fascinate us," the Prime admitted as reality warped around them. "We have studied your species throughout this conflict. You have no great strengths for us to corrupt, no advanced abilities to turn against you. You should be easy prey." "Yeah, everyone keeps saying that," Hana replied, activating the architect devices her team carried. "Funny how everyone keeps being wrong." The battle between human determination and cosmic hunger was fought not with weapons but with ideas. The Devourer Prime tried to overwhelm them with the certainty of failure, showing them the heat death of the universe, the futility of existence, the mathematical impossibility of hope. But Hana and her team had been trained for this moment their entire lives, trained by a galaxy that had dismissed them as weak and failures. They maintained hope not because it was logical, but because they were too stubborn to do anything else. The Prime's defeat was not destruction, but transformation. Faced with something it could not understand, consume, or corrupt, the ancient entity experienced something new, doubt about its own nature. That doubt spread through the Devourer fleet like a virus, causing ships to phase out of reality as their crews grappled with concepts they had never encountered. When the enemy fleet finally withdrew, they left behind a galaxy forever changed. The great civilizations that had once looked down on humanity now understood that strength came in many forms. The Coalition Council chambers were reorganized to give humans equal representation with species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy understood conflict itself. The old paradigm of advanced abilities and superior technology had been replaced by something more fundamental: the recognition that sometimes the universe needed someone too stubborn to know when they were beaten. Hana, now bearing the title of Grand Marshal of Coalition Forces, stood once again before the Council. But this time, she was not there to plead for recognition or respect. She was there to teach. "Today we begin a new kind of training program," she announced to the assembled representatives.